Conjuring 4 Last Rite. It's time to stop and rank all 10 entries into the 12-year horror cinematic universe. So my name is Max Enberg. Welcome back, everyone, to Max Talks Movies. If you're new to the channel, guys, please hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so notified when my videos hit the channel. I do out-of-theater reactions, movie, TV show reviews. Every Monday, I break down the box office, as well as I do these movie franchise rankings pretty often. So if you're new to the channel, guys, if you like any one of those things, this is for you. So please hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to notify when my videos hit the channel. Comment down below. I want to hear your ranking of the Conjuring universe. Even if you have not seen all of the movies on this list, just give me your ranking. My ranking is not the correct factual ranking. This is just my subjective ranking. Love to hear yours down in the comments. Have a fun discussion about some horror movies. And also, guys, please hit that thumbs up button. So I have done two videos in the past ranking the franchise, but I was like, should I do it for the last one? But this is the last film supposedly in the franchise, so I will be doing this ranking. I've seen all these movies at least, other than Conjuring Last Rites, I've seen all these movies at least 3 times. So I definitely am a fan of this franchise, grew up with this franchise, and I'm excited to talk about it with you guys. Also, I've done full reviews of Conjuring Last Rites, Devil Made Me Do It, and The Nun 2 since I started the channel. So if you want more in-depth videos on those 3 movies, you can also do that as well. So without further ado, guys, let's get into the ranking. There's 10 movies we got to talk about. Starting at number 10 for me is 2018's The Nun. This is a movie that I absolutely hated in theater and have hated rewatching to prepare for these ranking videos. The Nun was probably my most anticipated movie of the franchise because I love Conjuring 2, and my favorite creature or ghost or something of that nature that the franchise is introduced to up to that point was Valak in Conjuring 2. I thought it was easily the scariest part about that movie. And I was like, this perfectly makes sense to get an origin story on the Nun. But this movie completely underwhelms in disappointment. As this is a film that is 90 minutes long, and the reason why it is number 10 is that it just isn't attempting to even have a story going on. It's just a haunted house, another haunted house movie in the franchise. Now, this time it takes place in Romania in this castle. But the characters are just so uninteresting and very one note. You have a Father Burke, who's played by Damien Bashir. You have a person who's trying to become a nun and Sister Irene. And you also have Maurice, who's just kind of like the hometown person who knows what's going on in the area. They're all just very one note. And a lot of this movie, once again, I'll say this a lot in this franchise, relies on hallway scenes where characters are walking. The camera pans away, cuts back to our character, and poof, Valak or a creature is there. And it makes the film feel extremely dull and lazy. This movie is also just so drab in darkness. I'm all for dark, gritty movies, but this movie is honestly depressing to watch. There's like maybe a couple day scenes in the movie, but it's very reliant on its bleakness. And I think that doesn't really make you attached to any of the characters. I also think, again, Thaisa Farmiga is a very good actress, but it's just so distracting rewatching the Nun movies where, again, she is the real life sister of Vera Farmiga, who plays Lorraine Warren. And it's amazing how every time you watch the first Nun, you're like, is this ever a tie-in to Lorraine Warren? And it's not, and it kind of pulls you out of the situation. So The Nun for me has always been the worst film of the franchise. To number 9 for me is the first Annabelle film in 2014, another spin-off film that made a lot of sense because of how great that cold open was for the first Conjuring movie. But Annabelle 1 is easily the weakest of the trilogy of Annabelle films, as this is just another, again, pregnant woman home making stupid decisions. She makes stupid decisions when she's pregnant. She makes even stupider decisions when she has the child and is alone with the child as this doll is going crazy on the family. I think, again, I like the actors, Annabelle Wallis, Alfre Woodard in particular, are very good in this movie. There's a cool sequence where like the adult version or the entity inside Annabelle's like walking around in circles as the lead character is asleep, and she cuts in one room and the camera and she's already walking towards the crib. That scene I thought was really effective. But again, this is a movie that again is heavily reliant on a insanely stupid lead character and characters. This couple is insanely stupid as there's so many times where there's warning signs and instead of helping themselves or other people, they just keep everything to themselves. And if they maybe talk to one person, we really wouldn't have a movie here. But because they keep everything to themselves, they keep leaving this pregnant wife alone by herself in this horrendous situation. It makes the film very hard to root for any character. So I don't think this is as like this is not one of the worst horror movies of all time. It's just a forgettable, dull, drab horror film entry with very stupid characters. At number eight for me is The Curse of La Llorona, which, if you're not familiar, is by the producers of this movie have continually said for 6 years that this film is not in the main Conjuring universe to a point where if you go to HBO Max right now and they have like a Conjuring universe collection, this is the only film that's not in it. Now, why you said, well, why is this in the Conjuring universe? This film clearly is in the Conjuring universe, as we have Father Perez, who is a returning character from the first Annabelle film. Annabelle is shown multiple times. They explain the origin story of Annabelle in this movie. This is clearly in the Conjuring universe. It's directed by Michael Chavis, who this is his first film. After this, he directed Conjuring 3, The Nun 2, and The Conjuring 4. So this clearly is a Conjuring universe movie. But as itself, this is a huge swing and a miss because Curse of La Llorona is actually a really good entity to add to the Conjuring universe. It's one of the most famous folk tales ever. And but the problem here is that once again, this is a Spanish folk tale, and the opening scene I actually love for this movie really gives the intensity, and it's in the actual authentic location of where the folk tales took place in La Llorona. But then the rest of the movie is just in regular Los Angeles, and it kind of takes away the mystique and the culture and the cultural impact of La Llorona because they could have really just put any being as the villain for this movie for 90% of it. And at times it doesn't really feel like a La Llorona film. Linda Cardellini, I think, upgrades this movie from an acting perspective over the bottom two films on this list. She's such a good actress. The scene in the bathroom, I think, is also very memorable. And even the scene in the car where the windows are going up and down, those two in particular scenes have always stood out to me. But from a plot level, I've seen this movie 3 times. I probably forget more of the plot each time I watch this movie. And I always am just befuddled by the idea this is a Spanish folk tale and we're in the Spanish area for maybe 5 minutes of this movie. A huge miss for this franchise. Moving on to number seven, people have been having this higher on their list, which is interesting, but Annabelle Comes Home is number seven. Now, I do think this is a significant upgrade over the bottom tier of the franchise, but this is still not a very good movie. What helps here is we actually have the Warrens in new scenes in this spinoff. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, and you also have McKenna Grace as Judy Warren, who does a really good job in this movie. And the premise here does hook you if you're a big Conjuring fan, like including myself, which is let's do a haunted house movie. Oh, here we go again. But it's in the Warren house for the entire movie as these kids go into that banished room and unlock some of the creatures. That honestly is a great idea for a Conjuring universe movie. And there is some very fun to be had here. This is easily the most fast-paced film of the entire franchise. This, while stereotypically a haunted house movie, definitely has some more the creatures in the house are a lot of fun as well. And as I said, the acting, having the three Warrens in this movie also just really elevates this film. What doesn't is that the one the babysitter's best friend, she is so annoying. Easily the most annoying character of this franchise, and she does so many dumb mistakes. She's the sole reason that there is a haunted house element to this movie because the babysitter knows what she's kind of doing. She's a very stereotypical babysitter character, but her friend is a idiot. And the movie wants to save itself by giving her such an impactful story about her father, but it comes so late in the film, you already don't care about that story because you honestly hate this person so much. So the characters in here are very stupid. I think this movie gets very lazy where they do the same exact jump scares in the same exact locations on and on. And it honestly makes this film feel very repetitive. So Annabelle Comes Home comes in at number 7. Coming in at number 6 for me is the most recent film of the franchise, Last Rites. Easily for me, the weakest of the main four Conjuring films. And I think what makes this movie good is that it's very heavily focused on the Warrens. You definitely get the nostalgia feeling like this definitely is the last time we'll see Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga as Ed and Lorraine Warren. These are some of the most iconic castings in horror of all time. And they're really the reason why we have a big cinematic universe because everyone, the fans, have fallen in love with the true Warrens, but also the real life Warren. I mean, the real life Warrens and the actors who play the Warrens in this franchise. The love story always works. But this to me is just a very underwhelming film where the investigation feels like an afterthought in this movie because it feels like more of a family drama for the first 80% of the film. And then out of nowhere, there are scares and scares and scares towards the back half of this film. And out of all the families they've investigated in these four films, this is the one you just really don't care about. They don't give you an inkling on why you're supposed to care about these family other than kids are in danger. But all of the characters, the dad, the mom, the kids are very one note. And because you barely spend time with them when we actually get to the investigation, you just don't really care about what's going on. There isn't really an interesting main antagonist, villain character, either from a human or a creature perspective. So this one for me is very underwhelming to end the franchise on. I've already taught this movie a lot, so Conjuring Last Rites for me comes in at number 6. At number 5 for me is The Nun 2. This film was actually a lot better than I was expecting because after I was so excited for the first Nun and so pissed off watching it over and over again, when The Nun 2 came out a couple years ago, I just couldn't get me excited. Even though I love Valak so much, I just hated the first Nun. But I was pleasantly surprised. I don't think The Nun 2 is a very good movie. I think the film is average overall. That's still a monster upgrade over the first Nun. The magazine scene where Valak shows up and confronts Irene is one of my favorite scenes of the franchise. Really cool visual work with the magazines flipping back and forth, and boom, Valak kind of pops out. It's a very cool scene. This movie is given a lot more care as it pertains to story compared to the first Nun movie. I do think it's a lot more terrifying than the first Nun movie. But for me, what really holds this back as this movie continued was this film is really a murder mystery. But it's a murder mystery. The answer was the end of the last movie. So for me, the more I watch The Nun 2, probably the lower it will go on this list because it makes the audience feel really stupid because we watched what happened at the end of the first Nun when Valak took Maurice as a vessel. But this whole movie's murder mystery is who is Valak infecting and what is going on with Valak and who is she infecting? Is it Maurice and all these things? But we already know. So it makes the characters feel really stupid. We're just so far ahead of the characters. It just makes makes the runtime feel so much longer because the film drags on forever because there are all these twists and turns, but you know what's coming next because the ending of the last movie happened. So this is always a frustrating watch where I think there's more interesting ideals. It's a lot more well made. The characters are more fleshed out, but the overall main murder mystery, I watched it in 2018. So 5 years later, I still know what's going to happen. So that's my thoughts on The Nun 2. Coming number 4 for me is The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Now, some people have been very harsh on this movie. I agree, though, with this one point, which clearly this is a step down from a filmmaking perspective than James Wan's first two films. And I also think the biggest problem with this movie, and also the biggest problem with the fourth Conjuring movie, is what was so special about the first two Conjurings was, yes, was it very much a horror, ghosts, those type of stories, yes. But you could really fathom, because those are based on true stories and they kept those first two films very aligned to true events, that it made the film a lot more watchable, authentic, intense, and gripping because it feels like real people are in these situations, Real people are being affected. The Warrens feel like real people. But this was the first main Conjuring film. You're kind of like, this is kind of getting so over the top that the reality hook of the franchise is kind of gone. Because even in the first scene where the kid's like, his face is going upside down and twisting around, that obviously would not happen. So the suspension of disbelief of this is real was really lost with this movie. But I will say, I actually really enjoy The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. The idea and the hook of this true story event where this guy actually went to court and said the devil possessed me and that's why I killed this person and the warrant investigated. That's a good story. You actually did care about this other family that was going involved. And the fact that this film focused so much on the love story between Ed and Lorraine, I always really enjoyed with this film. And also, I actually like that there's a human villain. In all of these films, it's a supernatural entity who is the villain of the movie. But I like that there's a human using these things against other humans. That actually makes it a very interesting film. So I don't really love this movie. I enjoy The Conjuring Devil Made Me Do It, but I don't think it's as bad as people say it is online. And number three for me is Annabelle Creation. This is easily the best spin-off film. The only spin-off film I actually probably give a positive review on. I honestly love Annabelle Creation, directed by David F. Sandberg before he went on to do Shazam 1 and 2 and Until Dawn. This is a very effective horror film because we have these group of kids and you have them in a very secluded place. There's really nowhere else to go. And probably the most memorable, or one of the most memorable opening scenes, we get this parent on a nice day, and the kid dies. And they are fighting so hard to keep her presence alive. They use this Annabelle doll as the vessel for their child who just passed away. And you see the desperation of the parents. You don't really know if they're going to snap, if they're good people, if they're just lunatics. And while this is going on, there's really 99% of the rest of the cast are kids in this situation. If a child who is injured, can't really do much. She's really lonely. She only has one friend. The scene also where like the guy's holding up the Bible and his the cross, and his fingers start bending backwards is always such an effective scene. The tie-in they do to the first Annabelle movie is such a nice twist. Even as somebody who, again, does not like the first Annabelle movie, this film, what every good prequel should do is elevate the movies that come ahead of it. And Annabelle Creation only makes the first Annabelle a better movie. As I said, it's a very intense movie. The two child performances are also excellent as Talitha and Lena Bateman as Janice and Lulu Wilson as Linda are excellent in this movie. You don't even question their acting talents whatsoever while watching it. It's a very effective film. I do wish there were a little bit more to the parents. Like the first half of it, there's a lot for them to do. As the movie kind of goes on, they have less and less to do, and the movie can kind of drag. It's a very long movie, but I still really, really like Annabelle Creation. Now, number one and two, this is kind of switch by the day you talk to me and when I watch these movies. But The Conjuring 2 comes in at number two. This is a fantastic horror movie, which, yes, is it on my list slightly less than the first film? Yes. But it takes those ideas of the first movie and goes to the next level. And that's what every sequel should do. This film feels like a bigger scale, better special effects and CGI, better practical effects. The filmmaking looks a lot more improved. And this is what a sequel should feel like. What also I like about this movie is it's the first time we entered the idea of, are these supernatural meetings a hoax? So we live in a society where so many people believe in aliens, believe in ghosts and the supernatural, and so many people on the other end don't believe it at all. And this movie attacks this head on as the Warrens are involved. They're trying to figure out if this is a hoax or not. The idea that the house plays such good tricks on the Warrens that they even think that this family is faking to get attention, and then they have to return realizing the true madness that's going on. Also, the main child performance of Janet from Madison Wolfe is also a really strong performance. The couch scene is so amazing when the entity that's controlling the house is in her and talking to her, talking through her. Such a creepy scene. even creepier when you see the real footage of this real investigation that happened. The movie's very intense because Lorraine has a vision that Ed is going to die, and it only makes the film amp up as it goes on. And plus, you get Valak in this movie. And the Valak jump scare in that whole sequence with Lorraine is easily the scariest scene in the franchise and one of the scariest scenes I've seen in the theater, where she's in the room and Valak's ghost goes around the wall, becomes the painting, and charges at Lorraine. Such a well done scene. What does hold this one slightly, I mean like inches back from the first one, is that you can really feel the runtime. This movie has really no business being well over 2 hours long, and I think it's just a very bloated runtime for this film. It makes the film at times drag just a bit, but I still think this is a fantastic horror film and one of the best horror films of the last 15, 20 years. But coming out number one for me is, of course, the very first Conjuring film, the film that kicked off the cinematic universe back in 2013. James Wan, who I am a massive fan of because I'm such a big Saw fan, what he did with Insidious. He is one of the greatest horror minds of all time, and I have to think this is his best movie. This could be another run-of-the-mill haunted house exorcism movie that we've seen in Hollywood made 3 times a year. But it's not, because James Wan adds his personal flair, a filmmaking style using a lot more practical effects and real character, these human actors being moved by real people makes it feel more intense. The hook of this movie is that the Warrens are real people in real life, and this is one of their real investigations, and the family they're investigating is very real. This is the family that you also really care about. The Warrens don't become major factors in the movie until about halfway through. It's very focused on the parent family of Ron Livingston and Lily Taylor. You have really good child performances like Mackenzie Foy and Joey King, and each of them have their own separate occurrences where they interact with the entity of the house. Lorraine really feels like she's in danger for the majority of the movie, but they also just ground the film. They're charming, their love for each other always is why this franchise is so special, because of the chemistry that Wilson and Farmiga have. And even though this is the most supporting they are in the main Conjuring movies, they always, and this family, but really the Warrens, always have grounded this franchise in such reality. And this movie does that more than any film. So I rewatch The Conjuring all the time, usually most Halloweens. I will continue to. The creatures involved, the hanging scene you see behind me, it's always a very effective scene. The doll, the Annabelle prologue, but also the creepy music when Lorraine plays that toy as well. A lot of creepy moments, but it's very garnered in reality, and that's why this film always stands out. So The Conjuring for me is number one. What is your ranking of the Conjuring franchise? Let me know down in the comments. Like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon.